The next reader wrote one of my favourite books of all time, probably in my top 5. It's about an honest Thai cop. By the way, it's fiction. And I believe John will be reading from Vulture Peak, his latest novel. Put your hands together for a man who has done so much for the movement, which is Bangkok fiction and Bangkok Noir. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Burdett.
Some adjustment. Good evening. I might hold it like this. Can everybody hear? Yeah. I published the book Vulture Peak a couple of years ago. It's still the latest one. I had forgotten that I put a couple of quotations right at the front. I usually have Bob Dylan or someone. This time I have the Buddha, and I have a woman called Janet Ratcliffe Richards. The reason that I was surprised to see my own quotations was that I've been thinking about the theme of the book. The theme of the book is organ transplant. People selling their organs, usually desperate people, to people who need them and have the money. And when I first heard about this, or thought seriously about it, I thought the most dreadful thing possible. I thought it was like the ultimate degradation of the human body. And then I came across a quotation from someone, from Janet Ratcliffe Richards and others, for whom the whole idea of organ sales is just fine. It's part of the modern world. It's part of capitalist democracy. So I put the two quotes together. The first quote is a Buddhist proverb: "What you do to yourself, you do to the world. What you do to the world, you do to yourself." And I put it with Janet Ratcliffe Richards' quotation, which is, "If a living donor can do without an organ, why shouldn't the donor profit and medical science benefit?" So there you have two sides of what is becoming an increasingly serious debate, simply because business is thriving in the organ transfer market. So I'll begin with the first chapter from Vulture Peak. In the golden age of conspicuous consumption, it must be more than 20 years ago now, although it seems like only yesterday, someone rich and famous from Hong Kong built a stately pleasure dome high on a hill in Phuket, overlooking the Andaman Sea. They used the finest Thai architects who produced a lyrical palace with curving roofs under which teak pillars of great girth support high ceilings over vast play areas where pools of limpid blue are linked by tiny streams that tinkle over smooth pebbles selected by a feng shui master, and enormous bedrooms offer ocean views to make you gasp. The developer named the hilltop they had thus colonized Vulture Peak, whether in homage to the Indian mountain upon which the Buddha gave his celebrated sermons, or to the buzzards they had evicted, is unclear. It's as good a place as any for a triple homicide, although access is complicated. I came by taxi, but the driver lost us in a complex of single-lane roads that led to other mansions. We could see the place clearly enough. It's the biggest and the swankiest of them all. So in the end, I climbed up an iron ladder from the sea, and I've arrived a good 50 minutes after the forensic team, which is led by our senior pathologist, Dr. Supatra, a diminutive figure in white coveralls, mask and gloves. We press our palms together and eye each other from a distance. She is accompanied by a team of about 8 for the news that it is an atrocity of the more serious kind preceded our arrival, and the good doctor likes to be prepared. More than the size of her team, the heavy silence and glum faces, only she and her chief assistant are wearing masks, portend a crime scene lurid with bad luck. Not a one of us will not spend an hour or so making merit in a temple before the day is out. In my mind's eye, I stand before a Buddha image with a bunch of smoking incense, and bow 3 times. Dr. Supatra leads me to the master bedroom, where 3 human forms lie on a giant bed. In an attempt to minimize the bad joss as much as to express respect for the dead, Supatra has covered them from head to toe with an equally extravagant white sheet. She pauses for a moment before inviting me to share the labor of removing it. The rest of her team have wandered in to observe my reaction. The Buddha taught that the distinction between subject and object, the self and other, even between you and me, dear Farang reader, may I call you dear Far, is illusory. This lesson is brought home with perhaps more drama than the master intended, when the human forms before you have been stripped of faces, eyes, genitals, and, as the good doctor indicates by pointing to gaping wounds in each cadaver, kidneys and livers too. To call them anonymous would be to evade the issue. Stripped of every vestige of personal identity, they are all of us, as anyone knows who's ever flown economy. With so much surgery to absorb, it takes me a moment to notice that the finger and thumb tips of each victim have been snipped off. Supatra follows my gaze. Any first impressions regarding cause of death, I ask? Gunshot wounds to the back of the head, a single shot in each case. Everything points to a carefully planned execution prior to pillaging the bodies for organs. Obviously no print identification, I mutter. DNA? The doctor shrugs. If any of them committed a serious crime over the past 5 years, maybe. We only have DNA records for convicted criminals. But prints could have been checked on the National ID Bank. I shake my head. Someone is being unusually shy about who they killed. We have to go on the likelihood they were all Thai residents who could have been identified if they still had fingertips. I scratch my jaw. That leaves 60 million possibilities. Supatra allows herself a smile bordering on the coquettish. I may be able to help, detective. Just last week I sent off for some fancy software that will allow us to reconstruct the faces on my laptop. The government won't pay, so I'm buying it myself. Really? That will be helpful. Now I notice something else. No blood. Somebody cleaned up meticulously. Any ideas? The doctor asked when we replaced the sheet. You mean who done it? Only in the more general sense. She raises her eyes. Ronald Reagan, Milton Friedman, Margaret Thatcher, Adam Smith. Capitalism done it. Those organs are being worn by someone else right now.
Great. Wine?